Let's start with the really bad shows to come out this season, the absolute bottom of the barrel. Firstly, we've got Quintessential Quintuplets The Ripoff, coincidentally made by the same studio that made the first season of Quintessential Quintuplets. It's literally the same but worse in every way because the entirety of the second episode is speedrunning the development of Futada's relationship with 3 of the girls in his harem. My Home Hero is basically a Breaking Bad ripoff, but worse again. I just find it completely unbelievable that the main character in this anime can do and come up with any of the shit that he does. Like, he kills a guy associated with the Yakuza, which is already kind of stupid, but he caught him off guard, so whatever. But then he comes up with this absurd plan to hide the body by boiling it in a bathtub to shrink it, and I don't know how the science behind this works, but I'm gonna give the story the benefit of the doubt and say that that would actually work. So that's fine. My question, though, is how is he so used to killing people, and where does he come up with some of these absurd plans for dealing with these problems that come up in the show? And the answer to that, provided by the show itself, is this guy just reads a lot of mystery stories, which, to be fair, has been established before, but I still think this is a dogshit justification for him to be this quick to adapt to the situation. There's also the fact that I don't know how the show wants to present the main character's descent into a life of crime and instability, because while the characters say things like, I know this path will lead to doom or something, the opening of the show kind of seems like they're trying to glorify what this guy is going through as if his story is really admirable, and yeah, the show is stupid as fuck, but I think it's kind of fun, so I'm gonna keep watching it. What the fuck is that? What in the fuck? Now we've got Working for God in a Godless World, which is somehow even stupider than the last show. The main character is this guy who suffered at the hands of religion because of his literal cult leader father, so he wishes to be born in a world without any form of religion, and he's reborn in a world where it is a law for everybody living in this world to drink poison in public and die because of something called the end-of-life tradition. I think I speak for everybody when I ask, in what world would that be a thing? Like, I get it, I truly do. This is meant to imitate the mentality you see in a lot of cults, and cults are real. They do act like this, and the drinking of questionable substances is a real thing that they have done. But this isn't just the cult doing this. This is the government of this world. Even coming from the perspective of the government being corrupt, they're usually corrupt for understandable reasons and motives that aren't stupid as shit. What practical or power-driven reason would there be for the government of any fucking world to force this onto its citizens as a law that you will be severely punished for not following? You shouldn't watch this, but I will because it's a great punching bag. Next, let's talk about the Aristocrat's Otherworldly Adventure. There was a video I saw titled, The Aristocrat's Otherworldly Adventure, Is It Worth Your Time? And I'm just gonna save you 13 minutes of your life by telling you the answer is no. And I knew that from the first 5 seconds of the first episode that would be the case. Now that we've gotten the awful out of the way, let's talk about the absolute cream of the crop this season, starting with, how the fuck did this get to the top of Mel? I mean, I know it won't last that long because Brotherhood fans, and this was hyped up and everything, but oh. What in the fuck is this anime? Really good, that's what. This show goes from an idol anime, albeit one that's a complete departure from the typical idol anime, to a show about family and learning to love your family, to a fucking murder mystery revenge plot within the span of an hour, and it's fucking awesome. I really like this anime's art style and character designs. Of course, there's the fact that it's really poppy, colorful, and eye-catching, but it's really good at conveying this very creepy vibe and feeling to the anime, which contributes to the very unsettling atmosphere, and it's just good. Go and watch it. Delusion. This show is fantastic. It has a setting with an unforgettable atmosphere with 2 main characters who bounce off of each other really well. Their dynamic is so good that just watching how these 2 interact with each other and wander around this broken world is a real treat, even before you fully get the context as to what exactly they're trying to do. And the unsettling, creepy atmosphere is heightened even further by the incredible monster designs and tense as well as quietly disturbing direction that the show takes great advantage of as it bounces between the literal demon monsters and the horrors of discovering and dealing with basic human urges. Savages. It's an incredible show and I highly recommend it. Hell's Paradise is probably the anime that a lot of people are gonna expect to be on the top of everybody's list for this season, but I'll be honest and say I'm just not that into it so far. It had a really good first episode, and the setting for the island that all of these criminals are going to find the elixir of life is really beautiful and contrasts well with how horrific this island really is. But those are the only elements that really have me interested. The most recent episode especially felt like it was dragging, spending a lot of time by having a character try and convince the main character to work with her, and then shifting to a pair of characters whose backstory and relationship with one another starts getting explored kind of out of nowhere, and it really just came off as this show wanting to get their whole deal out of the way so that they could focus on different things. I don't think it's bad, but it just hasn't immediately hooked me yet. Skip to Loafer, on the other hand, is fun as hell. It's the typical slice of life anime you see pretty much every season, and yet it's really good. I think the thing that sets this anime apart from all of the others that use the same formula is the main character, a girl who previously lived in a little rural area with a tightly knit group of friends and community, who is now moving to the big city to cement herself as the fucking genius that she is. She's ultimately still a good person, but she's also kind of full of herself, which makes her a lot more fun than a more modest and unassuming protagonist. But the best thing about her is the fact that she's actually competent too. This isn't just a case of her being a big fish in a small pond, she's genuinely competent as indicated by her being the top of her class, but the show also does a good job at not swinging too far in the other direction by making her a perfect being. They do this by having her flaws become so apparent to the point of distracting other characters in the show from how great she is. They also present her socially awkward attempts to make friends in a way that still feels grounded without feeling repetitive or frustrating to the point of giving you a severe case of secondhand embarrassment. Next up is Mashle, which everybody probably expected to be here. I don't really have anything interesting to talk about. It's funny and I like it, and while it's mostly a comedy, I find the characters to be surprisingly relatable, with stories that are pretty effective at making me feel for them. My love story with Yamada-kun at level 999. You've just gotta watch this one. Recently, there haven't been many romance shows that I really liked outside of Kaguya-sama, and one that I feel incredibly ashamed to admit having enjoyed, but this one is shaping up to just be good without any strings attached. It has a good sense of comedic timing, and the two main characters are absolutely hilarious together. It also does a really good job of handling the more serious moments with some very competent direction that really puts you into the headspace of these characters. Also, this show is really well produced, and that's because this was made by Madhouse, which I'm sure a lot of people will see as another selling point. Remember when I mentioned that one show that I was embarrassed to admit that I liked? Well, one of the things that I mentioned about that show in my video on it was that it was surprisingly well directed, and the person who directed that show is now the director of the reason why Raeliana ended up at the Duke's mansion. And so far, it is incredible. Now that this guy isn't working with an absolute dog water premise and story concept, I was actually really excited to see what he could do with the show, and so far he hasn't missed. It's about this girl who's reincarnated into the world of a novel as a character whose fiancé is currently trying to murder her. So she reincarnates, and the character she reincarnates as is doomed to die. Sounds like my next life as a villainess, right? Well, it actually takes an incredibly different approach to this kind of premise. Instead of making things lighthearted and goofy, this show decides to take the situation that the protagonist finds herself in seriously. So it actually turns into a kind of thriller that's propelled by and subverts a lot of romance tropes and otome game-like elements where the main character uses her knowledge of the book's story to manipulate and gain the favor of powerful people in this world. Now that we've gotten the two extremes out of the way, let's talk about the ones in the middle. I don't think they're bad, but I don't like them all that much either, starting with... I'm noticing one or two fetishes being put on display here. Seriously though, this show isn't half bad. It's like Beauty and the Beast, you know? It's like a furry and a little child getting married, and, you know, when I put it like that, yeah, maybe this isn't the best. The Dangers in My Heart isn't bad at all. It's pretty fun, and I can imagine someone really getting behind how the romance elements are handled in this one. It's about this fucking emo kid who thinks that he's some guy who kills people falling in love with the most popular girl in the school. It has a nice vibe, but oh my god, is the main character embarrassing. He's probably the type of person to say there are two wolves inside of me, completely unironically. We've got Your Lie in April, but actually kind of good. It presents an interesting enough character arc in its early episodes to keep me invested enough not to drop it. I guess it's about this former violin player who rediscovers his love for playing the violin through a chance encounter with someone who absolutely sucks at it, and I'm sure some people would be interested in this kind of show, and it's actually not half bad with how it presents the characters. Like, for one, these characters don't talk in abstract metaphors and similes all the fucking time, and I kind of like that. KonoSuba, An Explosion on This Wonderful World, is not half bad. I feel like I've said that about every fucking show in this category, but I would honestly prefer we just get another season of KonoSuba. If you want a base premise, it's basically KonoSuba, but the main character is Megumin. I found myself getting pretty easily bored of this show after the third or so episode, but I also think it has enough of the KonoSuba charm to the point where I can't really hate it either. My Clueless First Friend. This show is cute enough, but it does get rather repetitive after only 2 episodes. It pretty much just replays the same interaction over and over again, which is, this girl gets called creepy. This guy says, oh, that's awesome or something, and then she blushes, and then they copy and paste that into every other scene. That being said, it is a really cute interaction, and while I did get bored of it pretty quickly, I also found it to be kind of endearing, which is why I put it here. Too Cute Crisis. This is also very repetitive. I'm currently 3 episodes in, and while I think all of the characters are very fun when examined in a vacuum and looked at over the duration of 1 episode, I also fear they might get pretty old pretty fast. The premise is an alien race wants to destroy Earth, but before they do, they send someone to check and make sure if there's anything that makes the people living there worth surviving, and just like anybody who has browsed the internet for more than 2 minutes, they thought the answer was no, which is a conclusion that, you know, everybody watching this anime would also probably agree with, but cats definitely are worth saving because of how cute they are. Despite my fears of this show becoming a mind-numbing exercise of the same gag over and over again, so far it's still pretty entertaining, so hopefully it pulls through and manages to be consistently entertaining throughout. Dead Mount Death Play. I think this show has the potential to be really fun, and in its first 2 episodes they've already done a good job of endearing me to the really wacky and eccentric characters present there, but it hasn't really succeeded at doing much else for me, which is why I will look at this show with cautious optimism for now. Iseleve is wonderfully upfront about what it is, some good old escapist wish fulfillment, and that's about it. This man goes from incredibly overweight to getting a 6-pack and becoming the hottest man on earth by this show's standards pretty much overnight, and no jokes here, I just really wish that were real. But anyways, this show makes it clear what it is, and it's not ashamed about it. But at the end of the day, it is escapism that only appeals to me because of a very primitive and shallow human desire. After School Insomniacs. I wasn't really feeling this show at first, but the second episode is where I started to get into it a lot more. It's about these 2 sleep-deprived teenagers who can't sleep at home and are always tired when they're not supposed to be, and because of their common problems, they find it easy to relate to each other and work together to try and fix their sleep schedule. It's honestly pretty cute, and if it keeps up the quality of the second episode, I can imagine it being one of the best anime this season. Something that I cannot say for A Galaxy Next Door. This show is just not doing it for me at all. It's about this guy who does manga as a way of supporting his little siblings after the passing of his parents, and then someone applies to be his assistant, and after 2 days filled with hard work and sleep deprivation, the main character falls on the girl's stinger, and because of that, they're engaged now. A lot of the story beats and plot progression feels incredibly clumsy, and the relationship between the 2 main characters just isn't that satisfying to watch. The only thing I find refreshing about this anime is how good the characters are at communicating their problems and how upfront they are about how they feel when confronted by one another. That's kind of cool, but it's the only cool thing about this show. And that's all the anime that I cared enough to talk about. Hope I could help in getting you into some good shows. Thanks for watching, and I'll be going now.